Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. It's still episode 74. Hopefully you just enjoyed that fantastic interview with Joe Kay. This is our section. We're figuring out what to call it better, but it's our innovation updates. Basically what we're talking about, these are the companies that are security companies that have gotten funded or they've had successful exits. It's our chance to break down the trends and take a look at it. Look at the other things that you need to know. So if you're an investor, it's good to pay attention to. If you're in the startup side, it gives you something to aspire to, especially this week, $100 million round. But it also, if you're in the enterprise, it lets you see where the money's going and maybe, hopefully, help you solve a problem that you've got. So that's the goal for this week. Let me tell you quick first about our on-demand material. Paul mentioned 2 webcasts this week, tons of great stuff. We spend a lot of time crafting content here that is all about solving problems. I don't know, Paul, if you get enough credit for this, but one of the things that's always impressed me is you care and you're solving problems and you're looking at solving problems in a way that help a lot of other people. And so therefore, we've started to make that available on demand. And so for now, you can go grab some of the previously recorded webcasts, some of our friends, Cyber Reason, Black Hills, Onapsis, Signal Sciences, and Stealth Bits. And I know that we've got some more stuff coming and some tweaks to the format as well, designed to make everything for you just a little bit better.
Yeah,
Maybe a lot
Michael,
better,
this week we did the recordings. It's almost complete for the security training and education on-demand webcast. Doug White and myself recorded the bulk of that the other day. And there's some awesome content that not only helps you map your training and education if you want to get into security, but some career planning as well. In addition, I mean, if you're listening to the show and you're planning your career and your enrichment of your career, those list of books that we talk about is certainly in that presentation. I thought it fit nicely. If you're going to be in security, there's basically 4 books that I recommend that you read. The 3 we talk about in the show, and I've kind of put the bumper on the front of that with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And understanding your finances and the financial impacts of your decisions before you get started in your career is probably a good time to do that. So I thought that fit nicely and kind of flowed into, Play Bigger, Brain Audit, and Never Split the Difference. And those are non-technical book recommendations that we included in there and talked about how those can help you, not just if you're starting your own business, but how they help you in your career as a security professional. Which I thought was a nice way to kind of round out our, first 30 minutes, and then you'll hear from IT Pro TV and Roger Williams University. So I'm excited about the on-demand content.
Yeah, no, me too. I like the approach and the way you're looking at it. I also like the books. I mean, a lot of people look at it and they go, but why would I read those? I need to be good at security. You would read those because you need to be good at security. And Sean D'Souza, you and I had a chance to talk to him on Wednesday. He's in our next segment. We're going to run the first part of our pre-recorded interview. The New Zealand time difference made it a little bit easier. So he was our Valentine, and we got that done. And so we're going to run that. And I got to tell you, it was I haven't even had a chance to chat with you about it, Paul, but it helped me figure out something in my business. Just talking to him. Book I've read, sites I've been part of, all of that, and it was great. So I know people are going to look forward to that. And he references Chris Voss, so you guys are going to see that in the interview.
It was just awesome, crossing the streams.
And it's like, all right, so we got to get Chris on the show next, and then we got to do a show where we get both of them.
Yeah,
and we'll make it all work from there. But let's talk about some rounds this week. So IdentityMind Global, $10 million Series C. So here's their description. They offer an online platform that provides risk management and anti-fraud services for enterprises. They've taken about $20 million in funding over 3 rounds since 2014. And I got to be fair, I went to the website to say, okay, risk management is fairly broad. I can't tell exactly what they do because it's got like anti-money laundering on it and anti-fraud and all sorts of other stuff. It looks like, to be fair, they're trying to figure out who they are and what they're trying to do. A Series C, $10 million. That's not a lot of money. I mean, it is. Let me be more careful. That's not necessarily as large as we've seen with a lot of Series Cs where you're really going for growth. That felt more like we're still trying to figure out the product market fit here. So that's what we see. Now, there's another company called Stealth Security. It turns out there's actually a bunch of stealth securities, so lest we make a mistake like I've done in the past, I double-checked that all these links are, in fact, for this stealth security. They do machine learning, and apparently they're looking for bad bots. But, Paul, if you had the chance to go to their homepage, They talk about runtime application protection. They didn't say security, but suddenly I'm like, well, isn't that a RASP? So wait a minute. So you're doing machine learning to look for bad bots to separate them from good to bad, but they got $12.5 million, 3 rounds since 2016, including an $8 million Series A. But remember, if this is your third round, call it an A. It's a big raise, but they've been down this path already. Is this something you've come across, Paul? Like, did I just not understand the value of this?
Yeah, and it lists some of their competition as Distill Networks, who's doing some activity with us this year in terms of sponsorship, because I really like their solution. And the easiest way to think about this problem, if it is like bot detection, is the problem that all the big websites like Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn have, in that they have to protect the account creation, account deletion processes. And what if bots are trying to do that? And how do you identify those bots? Those organizations have this problem at scale in a big way. Now, enterprises can take advantage of that, because if you can detect when something is a bot and when something is a real person, then you've got a much better way to get rid of kind of the cruft. So you can say, well, that's a bot, just ignore it. And then look at your security in a more focused manner by eliminating the bot traffic. And those are just a couple of different aspects of this. I too struggle to understand the problems and the benefits and the solutions in this space. And again, the easiest way to think of it is, those big companies that are trying to protect account creation is just one use case.
So in this case, that raise is not surprising, but also just about where they need to be, because right now they're only going to get traction with a handful of folks. But as they do, they'll probably figure out how to bring whatever they learn to the enterprise.
Absolutely.
So, all right, that makes sense. I dig it. All right, DataVisor. So this is interesting to me for a couple of reasons. DataVisor, $40 million Series C. That's huge. They've taken on $54.5 million in funding over 2 rounds. So you go, wait a minute, 2 rounds, but that's a Series C. Yeah, sometimes people don't always disclose the rounds, and so there's an undisclosed middle round. So that 54.5 could be larger. We'll see. But their Series A was $14.5 million October 2015. Then you dig deeper into it, and you look at who some of the investors were. They're big in the Chinese market and in the online market. But here's what I really dug. And I'm curious if you agree, Paul. Go to their DataVisor website. It opens up with catch unknown abuse, fraud, and money laundering with unsupervised machine learning before damage is done. Now, it's not my preferred way of ask me a question and hook me in, but I got to tell you what, I dug it, and it was really clean, and it stands out on the page. But then when you go down, it talks about protecting large companies from sophisticated attacks, and then it explains why unsupervised machine learning matters. They talk about being at scale. They talk about predictability. They talk like, Paul, I'm going through the webpage going, yep, got it. Yep, got it. Yep, got it. Whoa, I got it. So I think they did a really clean job at explaining what they're doing. And, typically, I think properly, collectively as an industry, if you say now big data, AI, machine learning, we're like, oh. But as you and I know, we've started to say, well, is it supervised or unsupervised? And why? And how are you using that? And what's the quality of the underlying data? At least they're hitting that head on. So I got to tell you, it's a raise worth watching. I think they're going to be a player, and I believe they listed Alibaba as one of their customers. So, it's essentially they're big. They're going to stick around. So I was kind of impressed with that.
Yeah,
did you see it the same way?
Well, it kind of seems like the fraud protection services are growing in number, and it seems to be a much larger market today than it has been. I think largely because most of the organizations that are doing a transaction, they've grown in number, certainly, and there are larger companies today, and that's forcing them to have some kind of technology to prevent against fraud. It's no longer just the strict financial institutions like banks and stuff that have to worry about fraud. It's really everyone now that runs a website and is selling something. So, yeah, it's a big market.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, it's lest we rehash a popular conversation between Jack Daniel and I. Chip and pin, whether you like it or not, doesn't particularly matter. When we look at like just credit card fraud, we had card present and card not present. And the problem was, as I've always looked at it, is that we're trying to apply a solution to solve a problem around card present fraud, which wasn't statistically a problem. at the same time that online stuff was taking off and card not present fraud was going to grow. And what we've seen since this is, hey, guess what, everybody? Card not present fraud still not a problem. Card present fraud continues to grow. But I think as you pointed out, and as we've tracked, I mean, I feel like we're talking about a startup handling this pretty much every week now. So you've got whether you should have an account or not. You've got not just the traditional credit card fraud. Now we have alternate payment methods. We have loyalty cards. We have gift cards, and we have all sorts of different stuff. So yeah, because what we learned from the U.S.-based approach to credit card fraud was I can put it on the consumers, or I can do a lot of stuff in the back end and reduce the problems to it. And we're now watching that same model go global, go big, and I think we're going to keep watching it. So it's great. Which then means there's lots of opportunities for everybody involved in the process. All right. Another confusion, Paul. Maybe you can clarify this one for me too. Perception Point, $8 million Series A. So this is actually their second round. They had a $2 million seed round in November 2015. Now, what that tells us, by the way, is they've gone about 2 years on their seed. And to get an $8 million Series A, it's a big raise. But typically, we want to see somebody go about 2 years. So I'm not surprised. So there's no problem here. But they're a cloud-based threat intelligence platform that offers cybersecurity and advanced email protection solutions. And when I go to their website, it basically talks about communications delivered problems, and they try to stop it. Well, they intercept it, and they use next-gen email protection. I'm sure what they do is interesting. It felt kind of tough for me to really put a pinpoint on the problem.
Yeah, they haven't picked their one thing that speaks to their point of view in their category, that also speaks to the one thing that they're selling on that we've talked about so much on this show. And they picked 4 things. 100% threat visibility. Yeah. It's 14 times faster. It's one-click deployment, and it's unlimited scale. Pick one of those things and run with it. I'm not sure which one of those things is the most compelling, just by looking at it in the brief moment I have. But you got to pick one of those things. And I tell you what, one of those things probably isn't 100% threat visibility, because that's extremely weak and probably grossly exaggerated.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, as I'm looking at it, I mean, first of all, if you're going to go with 4 things, I'm going to get twitchy. But also, I'm not really worried about the speed. I'm not worried about the deployment. I'm not worried about the scale. And to your point, 100% visibility, it sounds nice. I'm probably going to I want to understand better the problem that they're trying to solve.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I get it. So you talk about email, you talk about email-borne threats. Cool. Go one step further, and I think you can help me better understand it. And by the way, right up on our homepage, request a trial. For what? I don't even know what you're doing.
Yeah, and 14 times faster is really specific. Like, what math went into measuring that you're 14 times faster than what? Than your competition? Than some other way to solve this problem? I'm missing the context in.
And that reminds
faster.
Me, right? And great opportunity to say it again. Help somebody understand the solution to the problem before they understand your solution to the problem.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Which actually I think Joe K did a really nice job of today, explaining stuff. All right, Infoscyte. I feel like this is the Paul needs to explain show. All right, so they're Malware Hunting. They got a $5.2 million Series B, and this one came with a change in the CEO. So I linked to a second story about this, and I pulled from that story this. The startup is hiring an inside sales director, sales representatives, West Region account executive, senior security test engineer, according to the website. So basically what's happened is Series B. So typically, right, if you're an A or a B, you're still figuring out your product market fit. You're getting ready to go to market. I mean, you're in market, but like you're not in that growth mode yet. At your Series B, you're basically getting ready for that growth mode. So somebody who raises a Series B and then says, all right, I'm ready now. I need inside sales. I need sales. I'm trying to figure out these executives. I want to get this. Okay, so they're basically saying, we think we've got it right, and now we want to grow. So this B is probably going to get them closer to that growth mode. And when they can figure out their sales organization, if we see a C round from them, that should really be, if that's a company with any insight, it's going to say, we're just going to go now. It's time to just push this up as fast as possible. But since I know you know about hunting and hunting technology, tell me more about Infocyte, Paul, at least based on what you know.
Sure. So I haven't heard of them before, but 30 seconds on their website, and I've already identified a pretty big issue in identifying their differentiators in the market. They've got a section on their site that says what sets us apart from other threat hunting tools. They spend the first paragraph describing like what threat hunting is, and then the second paragraph that says, well, our products just do it different, and never really talk about what their actual differentiator could be. They say it's forensic state analysis to find definitive proof. I don't know what forensic state analysis is or what it means or how it relates to threat hunting. So they've done a very poor job of identifying their point of view and their differentiator, which could speak to some of their problems as to why they're putting in a new CEO and hiring a new sales team.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of looked at that, right? I mean, like it's this felt a little bit. And by the way, as an alternate comment on this, I didn't look at it as, oh, look, and it's a new CEO. Yeah, that a lot of times that happens. What gets you where you are isn't necessarily what gets you where you need to go. And one of the things is there's a lot of founders who, when it starts getting to this point, they're not tooled for it. It's not interesting to them anymore. They're exhausted, whatever. So that's just to be clear, that's not a slight, but because I looked at their website too and I went, okay, so you do threat hunting. Cool. Okay. Like here's what I want somebody to tell me.
Never define...
This maybe is another segment, Paul, but okay, cool, right? Because I feel like threat hunting now is turning into another one of these terms that people keep throwing around. But what I want to understand is, but what problem does threat hunting solve? And what do I need to do to be ready for it? Is this for everybody, or is it for certain sizes, certain levels of maturity? Do I need to have SOC in place already? Do I need to have SOC analysts that are wasting time on crap? Like, and these websites, they just go, look at us. We got threat hunting. Cool. Look at our cool stuff. I don't know.
Well, they just keep redefining what threat hunting is. Like they say in multiple different ways that it's basically you want to find stuff that's already been compromised in your environment. And that's great. They've explained that about 3 or 4 different ways. And then they say that they do it without an agent, and there's probably a dozen vendors that or more that do that without an agent as well. So they're just reiterating basically what threat hunting is and not talking about the actual problem that they solve and why they solve it better than anyone else.
I think, a lot of folks are going to enjoy the interview coming up with Sean D'Souza, but one of the things too that I've been talking about, and it's interesting, I've been talking about this with both vendors and enterprise teams in the last 2 weeks, identifying what's actually valuable, simple in concept. It's not always easy to do. And sometimes we see that. Now, by the way, these folks got pretty good raises and they're carrying on. So us calling out the questions on it, which I think we need to do this more often, that's not good or bad. I think what we need is, as an industry, is we need to get better at asking these questions and say, can I see the problem they solve? Because if somebody's trying to call me and get time and I don't have that problem, I'm not going to give you time. If I don't understand what you do, I'm also not going to give you time. And you shouldn't give people time that can't help you solve problems or otherwise create some sort of value for you. So I like calling these out. By the way, if you've worked with one of these companies and you're getting value from it, give us a holler. I love it when people write in and let us know, yeah, they don't explain it well. Here's how I like it. Here's what I'm getting from it. Here's that's good.
And this is a resounding endorsement for Michael, and what Michael does is they likely could do things really well and really solve a problem for you. They just haven't been able to communicate that on their website. Yeah. And it doesn't speak to a systemic problem within the organization. It doesn't mean their product is crap. It doesn't mean that they don't know what they're talking about. It just means for like one of those things that you have to do for your business is create a website and do a great, amazing job of explaining what you do in the frameworks that we've talked about on this show with people that are smarter than I am, like Sean D'Souza. That is a critical component, and that's missing in a lot of organizations. That doesn't mean that they don't have a CEO and a great team that knows exactly what problem they solve. They just haven't been able to communicate it well, and that could be the case. Now, it could also be the case. I think I like to think that it's a smaller number, but in some cases, companies really just don't know what problem they solve and are kind of lost, and that's a recoverable thing after a certain point, and then to which point it may not be a recoverable thing, and that's why you see companies fold or go out of business or mergers, acquisitions, or whatever. So
yeah, I think the unwritten secret, and it's not a secret, it's just that it's almost like an uncomfortable reality. Having an awesome solution will only get you so far, but you have to be able to communicate that value.
Sure.
And I think you put it really well. We're not saying that these companies don't have value. All we're saying is they didn't do the work yet to make it readily apparent. And lest you and I sound a little bit full of it, we take how many pitch? I mean, Paul, you and I have been doing this for 20 years. We take these pitches all the time, and we help people tell their stories in context. So, we have a vested interest in trying to get this type of stuff right. But what we've also started, you and I've been talking about a lot, and what I've realized is a lot of folks have value. They know they've got value, but they're kind of struggling to figure out what it is. And that's enterprise teams and vendors alike. And so, yeah, let's start having that conversation in this industry about the real problems we need to solve. And if we can do a better job of articulating the problems we need to solve, we've actually made it easier for the people solving those problems to connect to it. So it's a neat way that all works out. So the big news of the week, and I put this in here. I think this is borderline security, but given our application security weekly program, I think it fits. Zebia Labs, $100 million Series B. Boom. That's huge.
Amazing for a company who has a website that doesn't talk at all about the problem that they solve. At all.
Oh, yeah.
On their front page, there is no mention of a problem. If you read between the lines, you might be able to say, there's a quote, "It's critical for us to have a repeatable software delivery process," but okay, but why? Like, what problem does that solve? They claim visibility across all your tools. Okay, so is the problem lack of visibility, and what's the underlying problem that is a result of lack of visibility? And
there you go.
And then all the other things talk about their solution, and they never define a problem, which is pretty amazing considering their funding round. I'm sure. So this is a great example, right? If they got that large of a funding round, one would assume that they can define the problem really well and define their solution to it to the investors, but it just hasn't transcended into their website and their messaging.
Yeah, no, I agree. I read somewhere too. I mean, this basically poises them to go take on CA and HP and everybody else getting into this space.
Sure.
So the reason I put it in here is because, you talk about automation, you talk about DevOps, you talk about continuous delivery. Lest they sound like buzzwords, we're seeing where that works out. And I think what Keith Hoodlet on Application Security Weekly has been doing is giving people a really interesting look at, and I like the way he explained it, which is how do we help security catch up or keep up with it, or at least be familiar with it and know how to handle it. And so I looked at this and I went, all right, if you're getting $100 million in your Series B, then this is catapulting you pretty high up there. They've got to have a good solution and a team that they believe in to pull that kind of a round. And I feel like this is a watch where this one goes, because something like this is it's interesting. It's huge. Oh, and by the way, the other news of the week, and this was an undisclosed, Thoma Bravo, right? And I happen to like them. I like the plays that they've made. So they acquired a majority stake in Nintex, which is a developer and provider of workflow automation platform that allows people to automate their process. Okay, so somebody could have helped them write that part a little bit better. But where are we seeing everything going now? We're watching people looking at automation. We're watching people look at machine learning. We're watching people look at how we can do these things better. We're looking at coordination. We're looking at orchestration. If you're not looking at that in security today, you need to pay attention to the companies that your organization is already working with and figure out if, where, or how that's going to benefit you in security. And if you think you've got a play that makes these organizations better, guys, there's some serious money being thrown around right now because it's a big problem to solve. This is huge, which then means in security, if you're struggling with your value, but you figured out a way to automate something in a good way that gets you the good positive outcome, that's valuable. That's really valuable. Focus on that. That's a good outcome.
I don't know if you did this on purpose, Michael, but this is Nintex is another website and company that the messaging is just all about their solution. Me. It's like workflow makes collaboration easy. It's a point-and-click workflow. It's workflow that just works. It doesn't matter what your platform is, where you keep your content. You can automate your processes. It doesn't really mean anything to me. They haven't even come close to defining a problem or a differentiator, or even the description of the solution is just like workflow. Like what is workflow? There's no context.
Listen, without knowing more about them, this is one of those cases where it feels almost like a private equity classic scenario where they come in and go, love your technology. we're going to fix a few things with you.
Yeah.
And we got a couple folks we're going to introduce you to, and let's see what we can do with that. And it's and again, the reason I think it's interesting is if we look at the number of acquisitions that Thoma Bravo has been making over the last couple years and how they've been accelerating it, I think we're going to see this either incorporate to something else or get polished up a little bit. But again, it's the space, right? It's pay attention to it. But one last little bonus one on this week. Let's talk about identifying your target market, Paul.
Yeah. So this was a really kind of funny story that I came across, and I thought it was very relevant to our upcoming interview about understanding your target profile. And so there was a Girl Scout troop sold 300 boxes of cookies in 6 hours because they were in California and set up outside of a marijuana dispensary where marijuana is recreational legal. And if that's not your target profile, I don't know what is. What's funny is that Sam said she saw some Girl Scouts selling cookies like outside of a Panera where there was like a Trader Joe's and like a gym in the same thing. That's not your target profile. Panera already sells cookies, as Sam very quickly pointed out. But this is very much understanding your target profile, which is awesome. I mean, that is one of the things, just one thing that Sean talks about that we've talked about on the show, how you don't want to sell to everyone and you want to be very specific on who's your profile, not your market, who's your profile. And Sean will say it in the interview, who's the person that you're trying to sell to. Certainly, people who have the cravings for munchies are going to want to buy cookies. It's awesome. Exploit.
Yeah. I like it. And I like it better than them standing and selling it in front of the Walmart and trying to guilt you into it. Just go to where they got cash and they're hungry and they like
true.
it.
And they have cash too, right? Because dispensaries are pretty much, is from what I understand, 100% cash.
Cash.
Because, right. Banks and the whole Schedule 1 classification being illegal on the federal level. So they got cash and they got munchies. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, go to where people are happy.
That
makes a lot of sense. All right, we're going to take a short break. It's a good chance for you. I know we're already on Facebook, facebook.com/securityweekly. You can keep informed with our live broadcast, but that's also your chance for the discussions. We look at the questions. We try to respond back. You can talk with other people. And when we come back, first part of our awesome interview with Sean D'Souza.